Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and as you can see, the top shelf over there has been cleared off, and that's because I've already taken the two systems that are occupying those open spots on the top shelf over here onto my bench so we can get to work on them. So basically all those bins that were just storing castings up there have been emptied, opening up those two spots for my two oldest systems. These two oldest systems have now, for a while now, for 3 weeks, been undergoing what I refer to as horizontal migration. And horizontal migration is really just meant to get the worms on their own accord to leave the castings that they're living in. The castings that the worms live in, or we're living in, is underneath the paper, and the place that I want them to move over to is underneath the plastic. And the plastic's job is to keep that area nice and damp and cozy to help promote worm traffic, whereas the paper, on the other hand, the job of the paper is to permit some moisture to actually exit the systems to promote a little bit of drying. Last time we were here, I sort of had the order of these two systems reversed. I usually like to go left to right from your point of view, from oldest to youngest, if possible. Last time I had them sort of switched over. So last time we were working in here, it was the bin that was on this side, the older one, that really seemed overly damp, way too damp. And I was starting to wonder if maybe I should be checking in here on a somewhat more regular basis to kind of stir the material around and try to aerate it to see if that might help promote some drying. From what I remember, the system over here, this is the system that's younger, and this is the one that's actually got the population of my original worms living in it. And just from looking at it, I could tell there's somewhat larger clumps still remaining over here from when I was tilling it up and the pieces wouldn't break apart on their own accord. Here the stuff is much more granular and flowing, which is closer to what I'd like to see. And so yeah, last time we were in here, we were basically checking to see how the depopulation of the finished castings was progressing. And I guess over here I'm most curious to see, because as long as the stuff is very damp, the worms are not going to be very motivated to exit the material. So I mean, I could put all kinds of delicious food over on the opposite end of the bin, which is exactly what I've been doing for now 3 weeks. So 3 weeks ago we set this arrangement up the way you see it, with the horizontal migration feeding zone stocked with all kinds of yummy foods and fresh bedding. And then we came back in 10 days later, which was 11 days ago now, so we're 3 weeks downstream of the start of this process. And I wasn't really coming down here with the intention of emptying out the horizontal migration feeding zone, although I very well could have. I bet you there's lots of worms over there at this point. But as you can see, they're not all there yet, because there's a lot of them still hanging out in the finished castings. I have a hunch that when we get to checking the material in the other system, we're not going to find it to be as populated as what we're seeing here. But I bet you there's still a good number of worms still hanging out in the finished castings over in the other system too. So I pulled back just from, just enough from this little divider to show us how much the worms have nibbled away at it. Here too, so much moisture, way too much. Well, I think we're going to do exactly what I planned, which is just to make sure that there's still a good supply of food in the horizontal migration feeding zone, because it's possible that the stuff we gave them last time might have been eaten by now. And like we've been doing, we'll probably drop in a few pieces of paper or some sort of bedding to help build it out a little bit, because besides nibbling away at the yummy kitchen scraps we place into the feeding area, the worms are constantly always nibbling away at the bedding too. And I think we're going to have to just let this system ride a little while longer, let the material further dry, and hopefully we'll get some worms that'll sense the dryness encroaching and start heading over where we've been promoting the recirculation of moisture over in the feeding areas. So yeah, I really wish this stuff was a little bit drier. So you know what we were doing previously was we were just bringing back these top coverings so that we can put a little bit of protection on top of the nice finish castings while we work on the horizontal migration feeding zone. This way, maybe at some point if the worms leave the finished castings, we could come in here and simply scoop out the finished castings without having it full of all kinds of bits and pieces of shredded paper and stuff. Not that it's all that important, really. I'm not selling my castings, so the quality control on it isn't all that critical. So here, I don't feel like I need to concern myself with the drying of the material. Here we can have ample moisture. In fact, that would be beneficial because I think it would you know, further attract worm traffic over into this area. So we put I'm trying to remember what we gave them, pumpkin bits and potato last time. Stuff that I really didn't expect to see much leftovers of. And I don't see any signs of any of it. At least not in this system. Alright, let's see what we've got happening over here. Alright, much the same. Oh, here I actually do see a little piece of pumpkin skin right there. Always a little bit surprising. Yeah, I'm a little bit also surprised by how many worms are still hanging out over in the finished castings. I just wish more of them had come over here by this time. Well, you know, I guess the other thing we could do is sort of cherry pick any of these larger bits of bedding we bump into, because that stuff will serve as a nice little foundation onto which we can build the replenished feeding zone. I always tend to try to put the lure, in this case we've got more potato skins, some leaves of Brussels sprouts, I think there might be strawberry bits in there, and a good bit of it as well. I figured maybe we would do what we normally do, which is to place that newly added food as far away from the finished castings as possible to get the worms to, you know, motivate and to head over into where the new food and bedding is. But as you saw in the finished castings, the worms are usually pretty content just to stay where they are if they're not motivated to leave. I mean, they could be attracted to something, but if they're perfectly content in the stuff that they're living in presently, then not a lot of reason for them to want to move over. And you know, we had a couple other little sort of minuscule pieces of paper floating around down here before. Let's get those down into service too. And you know, I was just thinking, how do we build out these feeding areas a little bit more with some more bedding? I think we should add a little bit more just to further increase the space into which the worms can move over. I would hate to think that overcrowding is the reason that they're unable to come over here. Maybe they're sensing that it's already at capacity. And besides that, I've already got a nice fresh supply of my bedding that I prepared not too long ago. And we can take as much of this as we need. I'm just going to plop in a good handful, and then on top of that can come the yummy new food items. And I gotta leave room for that, and there's a good bit of the food as well that I need to fit into here. So let's see how it goes. Just like last time, it's going in frozen, so it'll thaw pretty quickly, I believe, down here within the worm bin. Quantity wise, I think we're managing to divvy this up pretty evenly so far. Yeah, that should do. And I'm almost tempted to even bring in a little bit more of my prepared bedding just to top this stuff off a little bit. Just a little sprinkling on top of the food. Then we can backfill. So in the case of this system here, the older one that I'm working on at the present moment, this one is only a little bit over a week, 8 days away from reaching 1 year of age, if you could believe it. And well, the one right next to it, the one with my original population of worms living in it, this system here is not far behind. It's only about 2 weeks younger. So it too will reach 1 year of age in less than a month if we don't get the worms out of here. I mean, in here, I'm almost certain of it at this point that we're going to be waiting well beyond the system's 1-year birthday before we can actually consider this as a harvestable batch of castings at the moisture level we're finding it at. It would be really nice if we could somehow better promote the drying of this material here. It's sort of slow going. I'd really like to see it drying off a little bit more quickly. I mean, you saw how I had things covered here with only these pieces of newspaper. Certainly not giving the material a lot of protection from losing its moisture. We're, actively promoting the loss of moisture. And I guess that was the other reason I wanted to sort of till things up here nicely to further promote drying through aeration, getting little air pockets down throughout the material. But yeah, look at all this. So many worms living in it. I bet you there's still more worms hanging out in this finished castings material than there are over in the feeding area. Well, I was really hoping to see better drying by this time, but no, way too clumpy. Yeah, alright, so the process continues. I think once again we'll simply be covering up with a sheet of newspaper, allowing for that gradual process of drying to continue, and we'll have to see how it goes. I guess we're 3 weeks now into this migration process, and it does seem like it's coming along pretty good. We've definitely got worms collecting, and I have made space on my shelf by emptying some of my containers that were just sitting there storing castings. So we've even got a place to put these little guys as far as available worm bins. And as I showed you guys in the video last week when we were down here, we've also got some nice prepared bedding that's been on standby for a couple weeks now, just waiting to be used in the build of a couple new bins when the day comes for that. And it's got to come soon because it'd be nice to get these two systems wrapped up too. So my thinking here today was maintain a little bit of cover, but maybe at this point even allow for more drying by just leaving it uncovered like so. And maybe we can just keep our fingers crossed and hope for somewhat better results by the next time we check in. So that's it for our quick check-in on our now 3 weeks in progress horizontal migrations in my 2 oldest red wiggler worm systems. Making progress, but not quite at the pace that I'd like to see, I think, hindered by the moisture level of the castings. Alright everyone, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. Those are all very much appreciated. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.